My son brought me soup every evening for 3 months straight. He called it his special recipe. Said the herbs were good for my joints. By the end of the second month, I could barely walk to the mailbox. You won't believe what my doctor found in my blood. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to Midnight Vengeance and tell me in the comments what time it is where you are right now. The kitchen smelled like rosemary and garlic when I came downstairs that Tuesday evening. Ryan was standing at the stove, stirring a pot with the focus of a man performing surgery. His wife Tiffany sat at the island, scrolling through her phone, barely looking up when I entered. Dad, perfect timing. Soup's almost ready. I settled into my chair at the head of the table. The same chair I'd sat in for 31 years, ever since Helen and I bought this house when Ryan was still in diapers. 4 bedrooms, wraparound porch, half-acre lot backing up to the creek. Helen had fallen in love with the magnolia tree in the front yard. She said it reminded her of her grandmother's place in Savannah. Helen had been gone 2 years now. Pancreatic cancer took her in 11 weeks. After the funeral, Ryan and Tiffany moved in. To help around the house, Ryan said. To keep me company. I was grateful at first. The silence after losing your wife of 38 years is the loudest thing you'll ever hear. Ryan ladled the soup into my favorite bowl, the blue ceramic one Helen had bought at a craft fair in Asheville. He set it in front of me with a napkin and a spoon, the way you'd serve a patient in a hospital. New recipe tonight. Added some turmeric and ginger. Good for inflammation. I tasted it. Rich, earthy, slightly bitter underneath the spices. I mentioned the bitterness. That's the turmeric. Takes some getting used to, but trust me, your knees will thank you in a couple weeks. Tiffany glanced up from her phone. She watched me eat for a moment, then went back to scrolling. Something about the way she looked at me felt clinical, like she was checking a box. I ate the whole bowl. I always did. 3 months earlier, before the soup routine started, things had been different. Ryan had come to me in my study on a Saturday afternoon. I was going through old photo albums, something I did more often than I probably should have. He sat on the leather ottoman across from my desk, rubbing his palms on his jeans. Dad, I need to talk to you about something. His voice had that careful tone people use when they're about to ask for money. I'd heard it before, twice in the past year, actually. The first time was $20,000 for a business opportunity, some kind of online marketing venture that evaporated within 6 months. The second was $15,000 for what he called a temporary cash flow problem. I never saw a penny return from either. What's going on? Tiffany and I have been talking, and we think it might make sense to add our names to the house deed for estate planning purposes. If something happened to you, the probate process could take months. I closed the photo album, looked at my son. He was 41 years old with thinning hair and soft hands. He hadn't held a steady job in 3 years. Tiffany worked part-time at a real estate office, answering phones, though she told everyone she was an agent. The house isn't going on any deed with anyone else's name. My will is clear. You'll inherit when the time comes. He leaned forward. Dad, you don't understand the tax implications. If we're already on the deed before you pass, we avoid capital gains. Tiffany researched the whole thing. Tiffany researched it. That phrase set off an alarm I couldn't quite name. My attorney handles my estate planning. If there are tax advantages worth pursuing, he'll advise me. This conversation is over. Ryan's jaw tightened. He stood, paused at the door. The house is worth $1.3 million now. Tiffany checked the comps. That's a lot of value just sitting there doing nothing. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to. It's giving me a place to live. He left without closing the door. I heard him and Tiffany talking in the hallway. Couldn't make out words, but the tone was sharp, frustrated, calculating. That was 3 months ago. The soup started a week later. By month 2, something was wrong with me. I'm 67 years old and I've always been healthy. Helen used to joke I'd outlive the magnolia tree. I walk 2 miles every morning. I eat right. I take my blood pressure medication and a daily aspirin, and that's it. But in those weeks, exhaustion hit me like a wall every afternoon. My hands trembled when I tried to button my shirt. Headaches came and went without pattern, sometimes dull, sometimes sharp enough to make me close my eyes and grip whatever was nearest. My stomach turned sour after meals. My thinking felt sluggish, like my brain was wading through mud. Ryan noticed. He pointed it out at every opportunity. "Dad, you're looking pale. Have you been sleeping okay? Maybe you should sit down. You seem unsteady." "Tiffany, did you notice Dad's hands shaking at dinner?" Each observation was wrapped in concern, but I started hearing something else underneath. Documentation. They were building a narrative. The aging father declining. I mentioned my symptoms to Dr. Abernathy at my quarterly checkup. She ran the standard panels. Blood pressure was higher than usual. Liver enzymes slightly elevated. She adjusted my medication and told me to come back in 6 weeks. That should have been the end of it. But 2 things happened that changed everything. The first was Carol Hayashi. Carol was Helen's closest friend, a retired pharmacist who lived in Portland. She visited me the first week of April, a trip she made twice a year since Helen died. We sat on the porch with iced tea while Ryan and Tiffany were out. "George, can I say something without you getting upset? You've never needed permission before." She set her glass down carefully. "You don't look right. And I don't mean aging. I mean something is wrong with you. The tremors in your hands, the way you're squinting like the light hurts. Your color is off. If I didn't know better, I'd say you were being exposed to something toxic." I laughed it off. "Carol, I'm 67. Things stop working the way they used to." She didn't laugh. "George, I spent 32 years behind a pharmacy counter. I've seen medication reactions, drug interactions, and poisoning symptoms. This doesn't look like aging to me." She left the next day. But before she went, she handed me a small plastic bag with a label on it. "Hair sample kit. Mail it to this lab in Phoenix. They test for heavy metals and chronic toxin exposure. Do it for Helen. She'd want you to check." I almost threw it away. Almost. But something about Carol's eyes, the seriousness in them, the way she squeezed my hand when she said goodbye, made me keep it. The second thing that happened was a Wednesday evening, 3 days after Carol's visit. Ryan had gone to meet a friend for drinks. Tiffany was upstairs. I was in the kitchen getting water when I noticed her laptop open on the counter. The screen was still active. I didn't plan to look, but the tab was right there, and the words caught my eye before I could turn away. Thallium sulfate, symptoms, timeline, detection. My hand froze on the water glass. I scrolled down carefully. The browser history was a roadmap of horror. Thallium poisoning stages. How long before thallium shows in standard blood work? Thallium acetate purchase. Heavy metal poisoning elderly symptoms. Can thallium be detected in routine blood tests? The searches spanned 2 months. The earliest one was dated 3 days before Ryan started making his special soup. I set the glass down. My hands were shaking, but not from the tremors. I took photos of the screen with my phone. Every tab, every search, every date. Then I cleared the browser history of my activity and walked upstairs to my bedroom on legs that felt like they might collapse. I locked the door, sat on the bed, stared at the ceiling fan turning slowly. My son and his wife were poisoning me. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in the dark, running through possibilities, hoping I was wrong, knowing I wasn't. The soup, the turmeric and ginger to mask the bitter taste. The careful monitoring of my symptoms. The conversations about the house deed, the property value, the inheritance. To them, I wasn't their father. I was a $1.3 million obstacle standing between them and financial rescue. Dead, I was their lottery ticket. Alive, I was a burden who refused to hand over the deed. The anger that settled into me that night wasn't fire. It was ice, cold and sharp and patient. First thing the next morning, while Ryan and Tiffany slept, I collected the hair sample. I followed Carol's instructions, sealed it in the envelope, drove to the post office myself. Express mail to the lab in Phoenix. Then I sat in my car in the parking lot and called Carol. "I think you were right. Tell me everything." I told her about the browser history. She was silent for a long time. "George, thallium is extremely dangerous. It accumulates. If they've been giving it to you for months, you need medical intervention now. Not your regular doctor. You need a toxicologist." "Not yet. I need proof first. You have the photos of the search history. I need the lab results." I need my blood work to confirm it. And I need to know exactly how they've been administering it. If I go to the police now with screenshots and suspicion, Ryan hires a lawyer and claims I'm a confused old man. Tiffany wipes her laptop. It becomes my word against theirs. Carol argued. I listened, respected her concern, then told her I'd handle it my way. The lab results came back 8 days later. The report was clinical and devastating. Hair sample analysis for subject George Whitfield. Thallium concentration, 847 micrograms per kilogram. Reference range for unexposed individuals, less than 2 micrograms per kilogram. Result, consistent with chronic thallium exposure over approximately 8 to 12 weeks. I read it 3 times. Then I made copies, stored the original in my safe deposit box at the bank, emailed a scan to Carol. And I stopped eating Ryan's soup. That night, when he set the bowl in front of me, I told him my stomach was upset, couldn't handle heavy food, just crackers and water for me tonight. His face changed for exactly 1 second, a flicker of something, frustration maybe, or fear, before the concerned sun mask snapped back into place. You sure? The broth might actually help settle your stomach. I'm sure. Tiffany's eyes moved from Ryan to me and back. A silent conversation I wasn't supposed to notice. From that point forward, I prepared all my own food, cooked my own meals, drank only from sealed bottles I purchased myself. I told them I was trying a new diet, something my doctor recommended. They accepted it, but I could feel the tension building in the house like pressure before a storm. Within 2 weeks of stopping the soup, my symptoms began to improve. The tremors lessened, the headaches faded, my thinking cleared. The fog that had been smothering my brain lifted, and everything came into sharp focus, including my plan. I found the attorney through a referral from Carol's husband, James, who'd practiced corporate law in Portland before retirement. Sandra Nguyen worked out of a converted Victorian near the San Diego courthouse. She specialized in elder abuse and estate litigation. When I told her my story, she didn't flinch. Mr. Whitfield, what do you want to happen? I want my son and his wife to face consequences. But I want to be thorough. I want evidence they can't explain away. Sandra outlined a strategy. Documentation first, medical confirmation of the poisoning, surveillance to establish pattern, financial investigation to establish motive. Then, and only then, law enforcement. She referred me to Dr. Nathan Rowe, a forensic toxicologist affiliated with UC San Diego Medical Center. His office was clinical, impersonal, exactly what I needed. Someone who dealt in facts, not feelings. I ran full panels: blood, urine, hair, nails. The results confirmed what the Phoenix lab had found. Thallium levels consistent with chronic oral administration over 2 to 3 months. He documented everything with clinical precision. Mr. Whitfield, I want to be direct with you. Another month of this exposure at the rate indicated by your accumulation levels, and we'd likely be looking at irreversible organ damage. Possibly fatal. You need to understand how close you came. I understood. I'd been walking toward my own grave, one bowl of soup at a time. Sandra also recommended Frank Delgado, a private investigator, former San Diego County Sheriff's deputy. He was 52, stocky, direct, the kind of man who'd seen enough human ugliness to stop being surprised by it. Your son and his wife are poisoning you for your estate. That's what you're telling me. That's what the lab results are telling you. He studied the reports, nodded slowly. Financial investigation first. People who kill for money always have a money trail. Frank's report came back in 12 days. The numbers were staggering. Ryan owed $162,000 across credit cards, personal loans, and a failed restaurant investment that had dissolved into lawsuits. Tiffany had $41,000 in her own debt, mostly credit cards, and an online shopping habit that bordered on compulsive. Combined monthly minimum payments exceeded their income by nearly $5,000. They were drowning, and your house is worth $1.3 million. With my savings and investment accounts, my total estate is close to $2 million. Frank leaned back. There's your motive. $2 million of motive. I asked Frank about surveillance options. He set me up with a system the following week. while Ryan was at a job interview and Tiffany was at work. Small cameras, professional grade, covering the kitchen, living room, hallway, all common areas, all legal in California since it was my property. The first week of footage confirmed the pattern. Every evening, Ryan prepared soup. I watched him on camera pulling a small brown glass vial from behind the cleaning supplies under the sink. He added 3 drops to the pot, stirred thoroughly, then washed the dropper and replaced the vial. 3 drops, every night, measured, deliberate, routine. I sent the footage to Sandra. She called me within an hour. This is clear evidence of deliberate poisoning. We need to secure that vial. Not yet. I want more. She protested. I listened. Then I told her what I wanted next. I want to change my will, completely. We met in her conference room 3 days later. Sandra had arranged everything. A forensic psychiatrist, Dr. Lena Marchetti, conducted a full cognitive evaluation beforehand. 3 sessions covering memory, reasoning, judgment, decision-making. Her report was unequivocal. Mr. George Whitfield demonstrates excellent cognitive function across all domains tested. No evidence of dementia, delirium, or impaired capacity. He is fully competent to make legal and financial decisions. With that documented, I signed the new will. 2 professional witnesses, notary, video recording of the entire process. I left everything to the Helen Whitfield Memorial Foundation for Elder Justice, an organization Sandra helped me establish. Every penny, every asset, every square foot of that house with the magnolia tree. Ryan and Tiffany would receive nothing. Now I needed the confrontation, not for revenge, but for evidence. Sandra disagreed with this part. She said I had enough for prosecution already, but I wanted their words, their reactions. Admission if I could get it. I left the will in my study, partially visible under a stack of mail. The law firm's letterhead was showing. Then I waited. Ryan found it on a Thursday. I was monitoring from my bedroom through the surveillance feed. He'd gone into my study looking for a phone charger, he later claimed. His hand brushed the stack of papers. He saw the letterhead, stopped, picked up the folder. I watched his face as he read. The color left his skin in stages, like watching a tide pull back from shore. First confusion, then understanding, then something raw and desperate. He pulled out his phone with shaking hands. Tiff, get home, now. She arrived 20 minutes later. He showed her the will. She read it standing in the hallway, leaning against the wall like she might fall without it. He can't do this. He's not mentally competent. Read the part about the psychiatric evaluation. Silence. Then Tiffany's voice, low and venomous. We need to talk to him. The knock on my bedroom door came 5 minutes later. I opened it slowly. Ryan stood there with Tiffany just behind his shoulder. His face was a mask of hurt, betrayal, the wronged son. Dad, we found your new will. I don't understand. You're leaving everything to a foundation. What about your own family? My family tried to poison me. The words landed like a slap. Tiffany's hand tightened on Ryan's arm. Ryan recovered first. Dad, that's ridiculous. You've been confused lately. The medication, your age. We've all noticed your memory isn't what it used to be. My memory is fine. I have a psychiatric evaluation proving it, and I have lab results showing thallium in my blood at 400 times normal levels. Tiffany stepped from behind Ryan. Her expression shifted from shock to calculation in a fraction of a second. That's insane. Where would we even get thallium? You're paranoid. This is exactly what we were worried about. I kept my voice level, steady, recording everything on my phone in my shirt pocket. You searched for it on your laptop, Tiffany. Thallium sulfate symptoms timeline detection. I have screenshots with dates. Ryan administers it through the soup. 3 drops from a brown glass vial stored behind the cleaning products under the kitchen sink. I have that on video. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I'd ever heard in that house. Louder than the silence after Helen died. Ryan's mouth opened and closed. Tiffany went completely still. Then something broke in Ryan. The mask fell away, and what was underneath was frightened and small. Dad, I can explain. Explain what? Explain poisoning me for 3 months? It wasn't supposed to hurt you. Not really. Tiffany said the doses were low enough to make you seem confused, so we could get guardianship, get access to the accounts. We never meant for you to actually... He stopped. The realization of what he'd just said reached his eyes. He looked at my shirt pocket, at my hand resting near it. Are you recording this? Yes. Tiffany grabbed Ryan's arm. Stop talking. Stop talking right now. We need a lawyer. They retreated downstairs. I heard the front door open and close. Through the surveillance cameras, I watched Tiffany's car leave the driveway first, then Ryan's truck 30 seconds later. I sat at my desk, exported the recording, sent copies to Sandra, Frank, and my safe deposit box, backed everything up to cloud storage. Then I called Sandra. I have a full confession on recording. Ryan admitted to the poisoning and Tiffany's role in planning it. Sandra's voice was controlled, professional, but I could hear the satisfaction underneath. I'll contact the district attorney's office in the morning. Don't change anything in the house. The vial under the sink is evidence. That night, I slept better than I had in months. The house was quiet. The magnolia tree outside my window swayed in a breeze coming off the coast. I was alive. I was clear-headed, and I held every card. Ryan tried calling the next morning, 7 times. I didn't answer. Tiffany sent a text message. George, we need to discuss this as a family. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. I didn't respond. Sandra moved fast. Within 48 hours, she'd assembled the case package. Medical records from doctor. Roe confirming chronic thallium poisoning. Surveillance footage showing Ryan adding the substance to my food. Screenshots of Tiffany's research history. Financial records documenting their desperate debt. The recorded confession. Dr. Marchetti's cognitive evaluation proving my competence. The new will, with witnesses and notarization. We delivered it to the San Diego County District Attorney's Office on a Monday morning. ADA Diane Chung reviewed the materials in a conference room that smelled like burned coffee and old carpet. She was 46, meticulous, with a reputation for prosecuting elder abuse cases aggressively. She went through each piece of evidence systematically. When she reached the surveillance footage of Ryan adding drops from the vial, she paused the playback. Has the vial been recovered? Not yet. It should still be under the kitchen sink. They left in a hurry. We'll need a warrant for that. She made a note. This is attempted murder. The thallium levels Dr. Rowe documented are consistent with a lethal trajectory. Another few weeks of exposure could have caused fatal organ failure. She played the confession recording twice. Ryan's voice filled the conference room. It wasn't supposed to hurt you. Not really. Tiffany said the doses were low enough to just make you seem confused. Ada, Chung looked at me across the table. Mr. Whitfield, this is one of the most thoroughly documented cases of elder abuse I've seen. Most victims don't survive long enough to build a case like this. Most victims don't have a friend like Carol Hayashi. She assigned Detective Paul Okafor to execute the warrants. He was 37, former military, methodical in the way people who've served in combat tend to be. They recovered the vial from under my kitchen sink. Contents confirmed as thallium acetate dissolved in a saline solution. They also seized Tiffany's laptop and found the search history I'd photographed, plus additional searches I hadn't seen. Thallium purchase darknet, cash purchase chemicals, no trace. Guardianship petition, California elderly parent. The arrests happened on a Thursday morning at 6 a.m. Frank had tracked Ryan and Tiffany to a rental apartment in National City. They'd been paying weekly, using a credit card that was already over its limit. Detective Okafor called me afterward. Mr. Whitfield, I wanted you to hear this from me. Ryan Whitfield and Tiffany Whitfield have been arrested and charged with attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and elder abuse. They're in custody at the San Diego County Jail. I thanked him, hung up, made coffee in my kitchen, drank it standing by the window, looking at Helen's magnolia tree. The blossoms were opening, white and heavy and fragrant. The preliminary hearing happened 3 weeks later. Ryan and Tiffany were brought in separately, orange jumpsuits, handcuffs. Ryan had lost weight. His face was gray. Tiffany looked smaller somehow, diminished. She didn't look at me. Ada Chung presented the evidence in a hearing that lasted just under 2 hours. The defense attorneys tried to argue insufficient evidence for attempted murder. Judge Rebecca Torres was unmoved. The toxicological evidence alone establishes a pattern of deliberate poisoning over a sustained period. Combined with the surveillance footage, the internet search history, and the defendant's own recorded admissions, I find probable cause for all charges. Trial is set for September 14th. Bail was set at $750,000 each. Neither could pay. They remained in custody. In the weeks before trial, their attorneys tried different strategies. Ryan's lawyer, a public defender named Marcus Webb, pushed for a plea deal. His client was willing to testify against Tiffany, claimed she was the mastermind. He was just following her instructions. Tiffany's attorney, Janet Cho, took the opposite approach. Ryan was the one who administered the poison. Tiffany's internet searches were research for a novel she'd been planning to write. They were eating each other, exactly as Sandra predicted they would. The trial began on a Tuesday in September. San Diego Superior Court, Judge Alan Park presiding. The jury was selected in a day and a half. 9 women, 3 men. Ages ranged from a school bus driver in her late 20s to a retired postal worker in his early 70s. Ada Chung's opening was devastating. She stood before the jury with a photograph of me and Ryan at his college graduation, smiling, father and son. This man loved his son, raised him, supported him financially well into adulthood, opened his home to him, and his son repaid that love by putting poison in his food every night for 3 months. Not in a moment of rage. Not in a single act of desperation. Every single night, measured doses of thallium, a heavy metal that destroys organs, damages nerves, and kills slowly. George Whitfield was being murdered one bowl of soup at a time. Marcus Webb's defense was sympathetic. Ryan was in over his head financially. Tiffany manipulated him. He never intended to kill, only to create symptoms that would justify a guardianship petition. Janet Cho's defense was aggressive. Tiffany had no direct contact with the poison. Internet searches aren't crimes. Her client was being scapegoated by a husband trying to save himself. Dr. Rowe testified first. He explained thallium poisoning with clinical precision, using charts showing my accumulation levels over time. At the rate of exposure, indicated by Mr. Whitfield's tissue analysis, continued administration would have likely resulted in multi-organ failure within 4 to 6 additional weeks. This was a fatal trajectory. On cross-examination, Marcus Webb asked if lower doses could be non-lethal. Dr. Rowe was unequivocal. At the concentrations documented, calling this non-lethal is like saying firing a gun at someone's chest is non-lethal because you aimed slightly to the left. The margin between the documented dose and a lethal dose was extremely narrow. This wasn't careful. This was reckless with someone's life. The surveillance footage played on a screen the jury could see clearly. Ryan in the kitchen, pulling the vial from under the sink, adding drops, stirring, washing the dropper, replacing the vial, serving the bowl to me. His face was calm, practiced, routine. Several jurors looked away. One woman in the front row pressed her hand to her mouth. Detective Okafor walked the jury through the investigation. Tiffany's laptop, the search history spanning weeks, the vial recovery, the chemical analysis confirming thallium acetate. Janet Cho challenged the laptop evidence on cross. Anyone could have used that computer. Did you verify it was my client specifically? The searches were conducted using your client's Google account, which requires a password. Additionally, several searches were conducted while Mr. Whitfield was documented to be at his office and Ryan Whitfield was at a verifiable job interview. Your client was the only person home. Cho sat down. Frank Delgado presented the financial evidence. Debt totals, delinquent accounts, the cascading failures of Ryan's business ventures. He laid out the motive in numbers. $203,000 in combined debt. Minimum payments exceeding income. No prospects, no assets, and a father-in-law sitting on a $2 million estate. Carol Hayashi testified by video link from Portland. She described her visit, what she observed in my health, her experience as a pharmacist, her recommendation for the hair sample test, Her testimony was quiet and precise and deeply moving. George and Helen were the best people I ever knew. When I saw what was happening to him, I recognized it because I spent my career watching for exactly these signs. If I hadn't visited when I did, I believe George would be dead today. Then it was my turn. I walked to the stand in a dark blue suit Sandra had helped me choose. I raised my right hand. I swore to tell the truth. Ada Chung took me through it chronologically. The house, Helen's death, Ryan and Tiffany moving in, the request to be added to the deed, the soup, the declining health, Carol's visit, the laptop discovery, the lab results, the surveillance, the confrontation, the confession. I kept my voice steady throughout. Facts, timeline, evidence. No emotion until the very end when Chung asked me something I hadn't prepared for. Mr. Whitfield, how did it feel to discover your own son was poisoning you? I paused, looked at Ryan across the courtroom. He wouldn't meet my eyes. It felt like drowning in your own house. Everything familiar becomes dangerous. The person you trust most in the world becomes the thing that's killing you. And the worst part isn't the betrayal. It's that you keep hoping you're wrong. Even when you know you're not. Even when the evidence is right in front of you. Because admitting your child wants you dead means admitting you've lost something you can never get back. The courtroom was silent. Marcus Webb's cross-examination was gentle. He tried to paint Ryan as a weak man led astray. I didn't take the bait. Mr. Whitfield, do you believe your son is a bad person? I believe my son did something unforgivable. Whether that makes him a bad person is for the jury to decide. Isn't it possible he was manipulated by his wife? Ryan is 41 years old. He made choices every night when he picked up that vial and added poison to my food. Manipulation doesn't absolve him of 3 months of deliberate action. Janet Cho was more aggressive. She suggested I was a controlling father who used money as leverage, that Ryan and Tiffany lived in fear of being cut off. Is it true you turned down every financial request they made? I gave my son $35,000 in the year before the poisoning began. I turned down requests to co-sign additional debt and to add their names to my property deed. That's not controlling. That's responsible. She tried to suggest the surveillance cameras proved I was paranoid. I installed cameras in my own home after discovering my son was poisoning me. A jury can decide whether that's paranoia or common sense. Ryan testified against his attorney's advice. He cried. He apologized. He blamed Tiffany for the idea, himself for the execution. He said the financial pressure had broken something in him. Ada Chung dismantled him on cross. You claim Tiffany planned this, but you were the one who stood at that stove every night. You were the one who measured the drops. You were the one who served the bowl to your father and watched him eat poison. For 3 months, 91 days. Is that correct? Yes. And during those 91 days, did your father ever refuse to eat the soup? Once. His voice was barely audible. He said his stomach hurt. And what did you do? I tried to convince him to eat it anyway. Several jurors shook their heads. Tiffany did not testify. Her attorney rested without calling her to the stand. Closing arguments took most of a Friday afternoon. Ada Chung was methodical and relentless. This is not a case of ambiguity. You have video of Ryan Whitfield adding thallium to his father's food. You have internet searches from Tiffany Whitfield's account researching exactly how to poison an elderly man without detection. You have lab results confirming George Whitfield had thallium in his body at 400 times normal levels. You have a recorded confession. And you have a motive written in $203,000 of debt. The defense wants you to believe this was misguided caregiving. Look at the evidence. This was attempted murder for money. The jury deliberated for 5 hours. I sat in the hallway with Sandra. She read emails on her phone. I stared at the linoleum floor and thought about Ryan at 6 years old, sitting on my shoulders at the county fair, laughing so hard his whole body shook. The bailiff called us back. Everyone stood. The foreman was the retired postal worker. His hands were steady. In the matter of the people of California versus Ryan David Whitfield, Count 1, attempted murder. We find the defendant guilty. Ryan's knees buckled. His attorney caught his arm. Count 2, conspiracy to commit murder. Guilty. Count 3. Elder abuse. Guilty. Same verdicts for Tiffany. She stood perfectly still when each guilty was read. No tears, no reaction. Just a woman watching her future close like a door. Sentencing came 4 weeks later. The probation officer's report was thorough. Ryan showed remorse, participated in counseling, acknowledged full responsibility. Tiffany continued to deny involvement and showed no contrition. I gave my victim impact statement from the podium. I didn't use notes. Your Honor, when my wife Helen died, I thought I'd never feel a pain worse than that loss. I was wrong. Losing your wife to cancer is devastating, but it's natural. It's the order of things. Discovering your own son is killing you for money. That's a kind of pain I don't have adequate words for. It rewrites every memory, every holiday, every phone call, every bowl of soup. For 3 months, the person I trusted most in this world was methodically ending my life. I don't stand here asking for vengeance. I'm asking this court to ensure that what was done to me carries a weight proportional to what was taken from me. Not just my health, my ability to trust, my family, my sense of safety in my own home. Ryan spoke. He sobbed through most of it. He said he was sorry. He said he loved me. He said the debt had consumed him. He begged for mercy. Tiffany spoke briefly. She maintained she'd only done research. She expressed regret for the situation. Her attorney had coached her, but nothing she said rang true. Judge Park took his time. When he spoke, his voice carried the gravity of a man who understood what he was about to do. The court has considered all evidence, all statements, and all mitigating factors. This was not a crime of passion. This was a sustained, premeditated campaign to murder a vulnerable elderly man for financial gain. The violation of the familial bond makes this crime especially egregious. He addressed Ryan first. Ryan David Whitfield, you are sentenced to 14 years in the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. Parole eligibility after serving 60% of your sentence. Restitution of $150,000 to the victim. Ryan collapsed into his chair. Tiffany Marie Whitfield, as the evidence demonstrates, you were the architect of this conspiracy. You are sentenced to 17 years. Parole eligibility after serving 65%. Restitution of $150,000. Tiffany's jaw tightened. She said nothing. The bailiffs moved toward them. Ryan looked back at me as they led him away. His mouth formed the word Dad, but no sound came out. I met his eyes, nodded once. Not forgiveness, recognition. Then he was gone. Outside the courthouse, Sandra asked me how I felt. I told her I felt like a man who'd survived something that should have killed him. She said that was exactly what I was. The week after sentencing, I changed every lock in the house. Front door, back door, side entrance, garage. New deadbolts, new keys. It was unnecessary, strictly speaking. They were both in prison. But the act of turning each new key felt like reclaiming something. My space, my safety, my life. I cleaned out Ryan's old room, donated their furniture, boxed up personal items and put them in storage. The house felt different afterward, emptier but lighter. Tom Hayashi, Carol's husband, flew down to help me with the paperwork for the foundation. The Helen Whitfield Memorial Foundation for Elder Justice. We funded it with a significant portion from selling the house and my savings. The mission was specific: legal aid, medical screening, and housing support for elderly victims of family abuse. People like me who survived but had to rebuild everything from scratch. Sarah Okonkwo, the foundation director we hired, told me something during our first meeting that stayed with me. Most elder abuse victims never report it, Mr. Whitfield. They'd rather die than accuse their own children. You're an exception. I didn't feel exceptional. I felt tired, but I also felt useful, which was better than feeling like a target. I sold the house in November. The magnolia tree was losing its leaves when the movers came. I stood in the empty living room one last time, looking at the kitchen where Ryan had served me poison with a smile on his face. The counter where Tiffany's laptop had revealed everything. The chair where I'd sat every evening, trusting, eating, dying slowly. I didn't feel sadness. Exactly. I felt the weight of a chapter closing. The condo I bought was on the 8th floor of a building downtown. Small, clean, quiet. A view of the harbor from the balcony. No yard to maintain, no extra bedrooms, no room for anyone but me. In December, a letter arrived from California State Prison, Ryan's handwriting on the envelope. I recognized it immediately. The same handwriting from birthday cards and grocery lists, and the note he'd left on the fridge once that said, "Thanks for everything, Dad." I held the letter for a long time before opening it. 4 pages, blue ink. He wrote about prison, the noise, the routine, the emptiness. He wrote about Helen, memories of his mother that I'd almost forgotten, the way she hummed while cooking, how she'd sit on the porch with her eyes closed when it rained. He wrote about what he'd done. Dad, I can't explain why I kept going every night. The first time, my hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped the vial. By the 3rd week, it was routine. That's the part that keeps me up at night. Not that I did it once in a moment of weakness, that it became easy, that I stopped thinking about what I was actually doing to you, that I became someone who could poison his own father and then sit across from him at dinner and talk about the weather. I don't know who that person is, but I have 14 years to figure it out. I'm sorry doesn't cover it. I know that, but I'm saying it anyway because I don't have anything else. I read it on the balcony with coffee. Coffee I'd made myself. Coffee that was just coffee. I didn't respond right away. I let it sit for 2 weeks. Thought about it while walking the harbor trail every morning. Thought about it while working with Sarah on the Foundation's first grant applications. Thought about it while looking at the one photograph I'd kept of Ryan, his high school graduation, cap tilted sideways, grinning like the world was his. Eventually, I sat at my desk and wrote back. 1 page. Ryan, I received your letter. I believe you're struggling with what you did. I believe your remorse is real. But belief and forgiveness are different things, and I'm not ready for the second one. Maybe I never will be. What I can tell you is this. Use the time. Become someone who wouldn't make the choices you made. Not for me, for yourself. That's all I have to offer right now. I sealed it, addressed it, mailed it the next morning. Spring came early that year. The harbor was busy with boats. The Foundation approved its first grants, 3 families receiving legal aid to pursue cases against relatives who'd exploited them. Sarah sent me photos of the clients. An 82-year-old woman whose grandson had drained her accounts. A 70-year-old man whose stepdaughter had forged his signature on property transfers. A 76-year-old widow whose nephew had convinced her she had dementia so he could seize power of attorney. Stories like mine. Survivors like me. Carol and James visited in April. We sat on my balcony watching the sun set over the harbor. Carol brought a bottle of wine Helen had always loved. We toasted her, talked about old times, laughed about things that had nothing to do with poison or trials or prison. When they left, Carol hugged me at the door. She whispered something Helen used to say. "You're tougher than you look, George Whitfield." That night, I sat in my living room with the last of the wine. The condo was quiet in a way that felt chosen, not imposed. I thought about the past year, the poison, the discovery, the investigation, the trial, the sentencing, the letters, the foundation, the new life built on the wreckage of the old one. I didn't feel happy. That word seemed too simple for what had happened, but I felt something I hadn't expected. Settled. Like a man who'd walked through the worst storm of his life and found solid ground on the other side. Not the same ground he'd started on. Different terrain entirely, but ground he could stand on. I washed my wine glass, turned off the lights. The harbor glittered through the window. Tomorrow, I had a meeting with Sarah about expanding the Foundation's services. Tomorrow, I'd take my walk along the water. Tomorrow, I'd drink coffee on the balcony and watch the boats come and go. But tonight, I simply existed in the quiet. A survivor. Not a victim, not an avenger, just a man who refused to let his son's betrayal become the final chapter of his story. I locked the front door, checked it twice out of habit, and headed to bed. The night was still. The future was uncertain, but it was mine. And that was enough. If this story moved you, Please like this video and subscribe to Midnight Vengeance. Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. Was George right to pursue justice? Or should he have shown mercy? To listen to the next story, click the video on your screen now.